Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Kerrville. This time I'd invite everybody to check in on your social media, let the world know where we're at, what we're doing, and also silence your cell phones while we're here so that we can listen to Dan Daugherty's presentation today. That's going to be we went from pigs to fish. So it's I'm looking forward to this one. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Roy Thompson to come up and lead us in our invocation and pledge, please.
Will the stage hold both of us at the same time? Bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunities you provided all of us. I'd ask that you be with each of our leaders worldwide, all of them on both sides of the conflict, but do the right thing for the people of Ukraine. Keep us all safe, and thank you for the opportunities we possess in this great country, the United States. Amen. Amen. Please turn to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For you baseball fans, today we're celebrating Major League Baseball is back in business again. I don't know if you all are thrilled by that, but supposedly baseball players are the highest paid athletes in pro sports. That's your trivia thing for the day. So here we are. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowds. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I never come back. Root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes are out at the old ball game.
Thank you, George. Please take your seats. And at this time, I'd like to ask Clint Morris to come up and introduce our guest speaker for the day.
Well, we're in for a real treat today. You recall our speaker last week, Justin Foster, who's with Texas Parks and Wildlife. And when I told him who our speaker was for this week, he immediately said, "That guy's brilliant." So he looks brilliant on his bio. He's a senior scientist with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, Heart of the Hills Fisheries Science Center. If you've ever seen that group of buildings as you go to Mountain Home, off to the left, that's what it is. He received a Bachelor of Science from Northern Michigan University, that's where he grew up, a master's and doctoral degrees from Purdue University. He lives here in Kerrville with his wife, Carolina, daughters, Andrea and Camilla. And in his free time, he enjoys hunting, fishing, and arrowhead collecting, and he has a collection. Interesting how these folks get down here. And he graduated immediately from Purdue with a doctoral degree, met the director of the Science Center here, came down here and has been here for 16 years. So please welcome our speaker, Dan Daugherty, who's going to tell us about what they're doing at the Science Center.
Okay, thanks everybody. It's always a great opportunity to come and talk to the public about what we do and let everybody know that there's more to Parks and Wildlife than game wardens and Lone Star Law. So I'm really happy to be here and share some of the science we do in Parks and Wildlife with y'all. Yeah, sure.
This worked last week.
Did it? If you move that. Maybe I just need to do that. Yeah. All right. Like Mr. Morris said, we're at Heart of the Hills Fisheries Science Center, which just to give you some kind of idea of where that's at. Out there on the Star off of 27 and Mountain Home, about 15 minutes outside of town. We are on about 60 acres, 25 research ponds, office, some storage buildings for our boats. And we're also a stop on the West Texas Birding Trail. We get a lot of birders come out because of the unique habitats we have between the ponds and Johnson Creek. We have a lot of birders come out. We're open to the public now Wednesdays from 8 to 5 for birding. So this morning there was like 4 cars at the gate before I got there, and they're still there when I left today. So we had a lot of birders come out to the facility as well. I'm sure that most of you have heard of the Science Center as the old fish hatchery. When I'm talking to people and I say I work for Parks and Wildlife, they always say, "Oh, you work with the old hatchery." And they're right. It was built in the 1920s as part of the Works Progress Administration. The CCC built the hatchery, and it functioned as a state fish hatchery for until 1969. You can see the sign on the top has Texas Game and Oyster Commission, which was the previous name of Parks and Wildlife. So it's been around a really long time. The system is all spring fed. So across the highway from our office is a spring called Stockman Springs or Elbrook Spring. That water from that spring is diverted into partially diverted into this canal system, which was built in the 20s. So it's also been a long time, and it flows across the ranch between our property and the Science Center, and then enters our property at a higher elevation than all of our ponds. So we do no pumping of water. Everything's gravity fed, gravity drained, and once we're done with it, it goes back into Johnson Creek. So it's a really efficient system. In the 70s, the Science Center transitioned into a true science center from a hatchery. We do statewide work. There's 13 staff on the facility. We have a director and a librarian, as well as 6 scientists like myself, and then 5 research technicians that support the work we do. I just want to give you guys a couple examples of some of the work we do. So I'm going to give you a local example first. That would be Guadalupe bass. Guadalupe bass are state fish, and they're endemic to the hill country. So this area in green is the only place that you find Guadalupe bass in the world. So it's pretty critical that we maintain those populations. Not only that, they're also part of the Native Bass Slam. So Bassmaster Magazine a number of years ago put out this challenge to people who like to fish bass and said, hey, you can complete the Ultimate Anglers Challenge in the Bass Slam category if you catch all 8 of those endemic or 7 or 8. I think there's more than that now because they keep coming up with new species, but all 8 of the 7 species, including the one on the top, which is our Guadalupe bass. So it's not only just our state fish and endemic to the region, but it does have economic value just from the simple perspective of people come here to catch Guadalupe bass. And so they're spending money in the hill country, and particularly in Kerrville is a spot that people like to come and fish for them in the Guadalupe. The problem with bass is, with our Guadalupe bass is that actually Parks and Wildlife back in the days before when they knew better, stocked smallmouth bass into hill country streams. Now, they're a very popular fish up north. They're not native to this area or the state of Texas, I believe, but they stocked them in the river to provide enhanced opportunity. And it was all well intentioned at the time, but later when genetics started to be a more accepted and easily attained science, we found out that Guadalupe bass and they're closely related, smallmouth bass will interbreed. And so you get hybrids, and those hybrids have what's called hybrid vigor. So they're more aggressive and they outcompete the native Guadalupe bass. So now what happened was we had high rates of integration of these smallmouth genes, hybrid individuals were taking over the population. So they were pushing out the pure Guadalupe bass. And so we needed to do something about that. And so our office has been very involved in probably the last 20 years in rehabilitative stocking, developing programs to stock genetically pure Guadalupe bass on top of the populations that are out there, so that over time we do what's called genetic swamping. In other words, there's so many individuals that are pure strain Guadalupes that over time mathematical genetic models will tell you you will flush out the introgression of the smallmouth bass into the populations. And we have to keep doing that until we get it down to essentially zero. But it has shown to be successful. So the column that says before stocking was the smallmouth introgression, or the number of genetic markers that were in fish that are hybrids in the population. So you can see that in Johnson Creek, North Fork, South Fork, and main stem of the Guadalupe River, we have pretty high introgression. Particularly in the main stem Guadalupe, 80% of the population there had smallmouth bass alleles in their genetics. And so over time with this pure stocking, what we're seeing is we're driving those numbers down. Now, if we quit stocking, not sure that that will maintain itself. So we have to keep doing it. But our biologists that work on this in particular are improving the methods to be more efficient and effective at continuing to drive those numbers of smallmouth alleles down. Then I want to focus on statewide work. This is my particular area of expertise, I guess you could say, or what I work on, is the alligator gar. This is another native Texan, a lot more native in terms of time than any of the other species we have here, as they've been here in the fossil record for over 200 million years. It's the largest of the gar species that we have in Texas. You can tell them apart mainly by looking down at the head. So the upper two are long nose and spotted gar. You will find those in the Guadalupe and Kerr County. They are here. The third one down is the short nose gar. That's mostly in North Texas. And then you have the alligator gar, which has a very alligator-like snout. That's how it got its name, also from its size. It can get over 8 feet and over 200 pounds. It's the oldest of the gars, which I'm going to talk about. The max age right now is estimated at 68 years. And it's the oldest and largest freshwater fish in Texas among all species that we have. So it's pretty unique. Problem with the alligator gar is they're like I like to call them the Rodney Dangerfield of fishes. They just have never got any respect. And then that sentiment's been held by wildlife professionals as well as the public. You can see this paper here from the Transactions of the American Fisheries Society in 1931. It was published by the Texas Game and Fish and Oyster Commission that talked about electricity as a means of garfish and carp control. So there were active efforts to eradicate gars, including the alligator gar from Texas, because nobody cared about them. They thought they ate all the good fish, bass, crappie, bluegill. They were just a nuisance in commercial nets at the time. So nobody cared about alligator gar. They wanted to get rid of them, all gars. And this sentiment, not only the eradication, but the sentiment continued into overharvest. So, and this continued for a long time. You see that picture up in the middle right there. That's not an old picture. That's probably from the late 90s, early 2000s. And there was no regulation on alligator gar. You could harvest as many as you want a day. They were shot with bow and arrow, harvested with rod and reel, virtually whatever you wanted to do, you could do. And so alligator gar numbers really took a hit across their range. Not only did we have eradication efforts and overharvest, but we also had anthropogenic changes to our river systems, the damming of river systems, which was very popular in Texas. All of our waters, all of our lakes are really reservoirs, right? So what the reservoirs do is modify the flow regime. And so you don't get, they're like flood control reservoirs is a good example. Alligator gar and gars in general, and many fish, to be quite honest, rely on flooded vegetation to spawn. They use the floodplains when it's inundated with water. And so when we take those we make them flood controlled, they aren't able to reproduce as often or as effective or as efficiently as they used to. So kind of really got the 3 barrels all at once: eradication, overharvest, and habitat manipulation. And what this ended up in is a real range restriction for the alligator gar. Now, the area in blue and yellow is the range of the species worldwide. That's where you find alligator gar. You'll see a big portion of that's in Texas and Louisiana. The area in blue is where they've been eradicated from, which you can see is along pretty much the middle Mississippi corridor, which was dammed a lot. And so fortunately, even through all the efforts that we tried to get rid of them, they're still around. And Texas did not see any real range contraction, but we did see changes in population abundance and structure. But the change, the perspectives of anglers and biologists, wildlife professionals are changing. And they've been changing since about the 1990s, early 2000s. So there's much greater appreciation for native species and biodiversity in systems and how important they are in maintaining the populations of everything else in the fish community. And there's also a very strong interest in trophy angling nowadays. So you can see that they've been featured in the Wall Street Journal. There was a River Monster show on Discovery, the episode on alligator gar. So you see that they've become quite popular. And so, you know, these increases in interest in native species and biodiversity and angling have all brought greater publicity, popularity, and pressure, the 3 Ps on the alligator gar now. And because we have such good populations, Texas has been a target. People coming from all over the world to trophy fish for alligator gar. And so we needed to do some management. And so we made the department had a management goal in 2009 of maintaining the existing trophy gar fisheries that we have. And we instituted the first regulation on the species ever. Went from no limits at all, no regulation, to 1 per day in 2009, which was a huge thing to get through. We made them a priority species for management, identified the data needs, which, because nobody paid attention to them for years and years and years, we knew nothing. And then we conducted research, which was our job, to try and figure out some of the basic information we needed in order to manage them in a scientifically defensible way. One piece of a puzzle on any fish that's managed is understanding fish age. Age is central to everything that you put into a population model to predict harvest and effects on populations. For example, you need to know longevity. Well, that's based on to age X. You need to know things about how fast they grow. That's based usually as a metric of length at age. Maturity, so when they reach maturity and reproductively spawn, that's based at age X. So all of these factors are really centered on knowing how old fish are, what happens at various ages in the fish life. Those go into the models, and then the models tell you what you should be doing. So age is critical. How do we age fish? Well, the best way to do it, and the most reliable usually, is to use what's called the otolith, which is akin to the inner ear bone, like your hammer or your stirrup. It's used in balance and orientation in the fish. It's metabolically inert, so if it doesn't have anything to eat, it doesn't resorb the otolith. It's made of calcium carbonate, like underlying carbonate, because that's going to be important in the later half of this talk. And it records annular growth. So you see the picture at the bottom. This tells you, where the otolith is and what they look like. But the bottom picture, I'm blown up for you, is the otolith. You can section that otolith just like you can when you cut a tree down and you look at the stump and you see the rings. So you can see that in that otolith, there are rings just like there is in a tree. And those are the rings that you use to age that fish. For an alligator gar, these are the otoliths out of an alligator gar, so you can get a rough estimate on size. So pretty much the size of your pinky nail or smaller. We figured out that if you cut the otolith on that dotted line and flip it on edge, polish it, and put it under microscope at pretty high magnification, you can see the rings in the alligator gar as well. And you can see here, I've got the first 8 annuli laid out, showing you, that's through age 8. But once they get about that age is when they start to be reproductively mature. And so the growth slows down because they're putting more energy into producing eggs and milk. And so you see past age 8, all those lines kind of stack up on top of each other. It kind of looks like a library book on edge. And you're like, what do I count? What don't I count? So we weren't quite sure how accurate we were in that zone of the otolith. And so we needed to know how accurate we are. And even in fish, this data has to stand up to scrutiny. I mean, sometimes people bring lawyers to the commission meetings and all kinds of stuff, and they try to poke holes in everything we do because it affects them. So we really have to have scientifically defensible data. So we needed to know with these fish, especially as old as they get, that we were accurate. And so how does one determine the accuracy of age of these old fish? Well, we use radiocarbon. Remember I said these are made of calcium carbonate. All right, so I'm gonna ask, for show of hands, how many of you are alive in the 50s and 60s? You don't really have to answer. I just wanted to see if you guys would. So back in the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of thermonuclear atomic bomb testing. And so when an atomic bomb goes off, it releases a very unique radioisotope of carbon, carbon-14. It's ubiquitous. Once it's in the atmosphere, it gets spread around the globe and rains down in the hydrosphere, it gets in the lakes, gets in the sediments, gets in everything. And so that carbon is then incorporated into the food chain and passed through the food chain. And so anything that has calcium carbonate, skeletal structure, coral, anything like that, incorporates the C14 into its structure. And so it provides a unique timestamp around that time when the thermonuclear testing was going on, and then afterwards. So just a real quick chemistry lesson. So carbon, the 3 main isotopes of carbon, the 12, 13, and 14. 12 is by far the most common. And everything is carbon 12. 98.9% of all the carbon out there is carbon 12. Carbon 13 is about 1%. We're not interested or worried about that. That's not what we tested for. But you see carbon 14, like I said, very, very rare. Less than 0.1% occurs naturally. So when these bombs went off, it really spiked the carbon 14 available in the atmosphere and in the environment, just from the the bomb test. And you can see that down in the graph, the x-axis there. It's probably hard for y'all to read, but starting in the 1950s, all the little blue bars are the thermonuclear tests, and the lines are the carbon 14 measured in the atmosphere around the world. So you can see that huge spike in carbon 14 at that time, and then it's decaying over time into the future. So our theory was, if we really think that these fish are 50, 60 years old, then we should see this in their otoliths. So this fish right here, for instance, from the Brazos River, we aged it at 60 years old, which puts it in the 1957 year class. So if we were to take out some of that carbon from the core of that otolith, which is that yellow area, we were to drill some of that out, that's the carbon that would have been placed in there in 1957. So if we drilled that out and we measured the carbon 14 in there, we should see it somewhere but like on the graph by the star in terms of the concentration. Another fish, 55 years old, 1965 year class. We did the same with that fish, we should see it really high if that's what's going on, if our ages are correct, right? So that's what we did. We worked, the instrumentation to do this is kind of rare. We worked with a NOAA lab in Hawaii that has what's called a micromill. It's a essentially a drill bit that's computer driven. Put the sample in there and you tell it based on an image where to drill out, and it goes in there like the picture on the right there and drills out a little sample. Then that sample we sent to this facility, No Sam's, which is in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. This is a accelerator mass spectrometer. It's about $1.5 million machine, so we don't have one. But they will, for a small fee, take your sample and process it and send back the data and tell you how much carbon-14 you have in your sample. And so we sent them all those samples you see behind the picture. The ones I've got highlighted there with the yellow arrows are from pre-bomb time. We estimated those fish to be from 1946, so we should see virtually zero carbon-14 in those samples. All the fish here highlighted are fish that should be during the prom pulse from the 1950s, 60s, 70s year classes. And then we had a couple kind of control fish from recently, 80s, 90s. We should see them somewhere down in that green circle on that graph. If we're aging them correctly, they should follow this line. And so what do we find? So I'm just wanted to show you that these are a couple reference lines of kind of the same thing of what you saw before in the graph on the C14. But these are actually from North American systems, lakes, and so they're showing you what you should see in this region of the country or of the world. The year is down on the x-axis, and then the carbon-14 is the y-axis up here. So concentration goes up or down depending on where you're at. And if we plot the carbon-14 samples from our fish, we got this. Each of the dots is one of our fish, and corresponding to the year class underneath. So when you run a mathematical model through that and model the fit, it follows very closely to what we expected to see if we were aging the fish correctly. If we were wrong or underaging or overaging, that line would have shifted much more this way or that way. But it's a very good fit to the underlying reference. So it's telling us our ages on these old fish are quite accurate. Our error is plus or minus a couple years, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing when you're talking, 50 to 100 year lifespan. Oldest fish is validated now at 68 years, but we were sent a fish from Mississippi, 8'5" 327 pounds. The Mississippi Department of Wildlife doesn't know how to age alligator gar, so they sent us the otolith and asked us to do an age estimate for them. And here's the otolith, and you can see, we've never seen an otolith that had a ram's horn curvature to it like this. And so we aged this fish at 95 years. And we're currently in the process of doing the radiocarbon work on this individual with Mississippi to validate that. So if we're plus or minus 5 years, we could be looking at another species of fish that lives over 100 years. So pretty interesting stuff. And with that, that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, not just about alligator gar or anything else, but thanks. Okay, yeah.
So I've caught gar before.
Uh-huh.
I never tried to eat one because you can't fillet them without a chainsaw. So what are they're trying to catch them for trophies. Are they eating them? Obviously, whenever you do your aging, you have to harvest the fish to do that.
Right, yeah.
So like the one you just showed, are they catching those and killing them and then just sending stuff in, or?
It's a combination. So it used to be a very harvest oriented fishery. Oh, sorry. The question was, are the people that are angling, trophy angling for alligator gar, are they harvesting the fish? Bow anglers, yes. It's still legal to bow angle for alligator gar. So, but they are limited. Once they shoot and hit a fish, that is their fish for the day. We do have in the Trinity River, which is our premier alligator gar fishery, you have to actually draw a tag now there's 150 fish limit per year on fish over 4 feet. So you have to draw a tag to harvest them. But the good news is that more and more people are switching to catch and release. So there are a lot of guides that fish hook and line, catch and release, and they are all virtually catch and release guides now. So there is a very small portion still do bow angling, but most of them are catch and release. And we're finding through another project that some of these fish, we're working with guides that are tagging these fish. So they catch them, they tag them, they let them go. And we've seen, we're on our 30-year data with that now. We've seen some of these trophy-sized fish being caught 3 and 4 times already. So it's really good to see that, you know, this catch and release ethic increasing, and also that, you know, these fish that were caught aren't, you know, dying from stress or anything. So I saw his hand first. You're next.
You have a problem with, I have a fun too, with turtles in your fish pond out there. And so you get rid of them, you trap them, or?
We have a few, but not anything too crazy. Also, our water being spring fed, our water's quite cold. So it's actually probably about 68 to 70 degrees year round. So we don't have probably as many turtles for that reason. Yeah, I wouldn't advocate to kill them and maybe trap and transfer.
I found out, I read an article, I think Texas Wildlife Magazine, that now it's actually illegal to kill them, I guess, basically.
Right.
And so like my pond, if I go out there on my 30, 1 acre, so.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out maybe how would that legally take care of what I think is probably a problem.
Yeah, that, well, I can't answer I can't say too much because it's not my area of expertise, but it's something that I could certainly get your contact information and put you in contact with the people that would be the right people to do. I have never necessarily seen where turtle fish conflicts have been a case. I don't know, are they eating all your vegetation or?
Like it's awful, a lot of them are winning.
Right.
And I'll talk to Gabe.
Okay. Okay. What does he say? Have you talked to him yet?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
They
Okay.
come out pretty regularly.
Right. Okay. He's next then.
Just to make alligator gar scares a lot of people who think they're alligators.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We get that all the time. Yep. Yeah. We have a head, taxidermied head from an 8-foot fish that died in a net that we take to various things, and yeah, you get some interesting reactions. Yeah.
Oh, just one question.
I'm gonna let him go next, then I'll come back to you.
The minimum length eagle bass of spotted or smallmouth. Where do they get that? They set that maximum, and how do you write it?
Usually, so just in a general sense, I won't speak to exactly the specifics of largemouth, but usually it's based on, like I said, the models and growth, and you try to get and from an individual's perspective, you try to get a fish at least to spawn once and contribute to the next generation before he's eligible to harvest, or she is eligible to harvest. And so it's likely that the best spawners are, you know, they're reaching maturity and spawning the first time by the time they're 14 inches. And so once they've hit that and spawned, then they've contributed to the next generation. And so that's why after 14, it's not as critical for them to be around. That's usually how it works. I mean, that's the theory underlying it. Yeah. But like for instance, alligator gar, the interesting thing, another project, but the interesting thing is we found that the male only gets to be about 4 to 5 feet, even though they only live to about 30 years. It's the females, virtually all the fish over 6 feet, which are the trophy sized fish that people are looking for, they're all female. And you know, in a population, the females are really what drive numbers because they're the ones with the eggs, you know. We talk about expendable males, right? You really have to have the biomass of females out there. And so, because everybody's targeting, you know, they're targeting these large fish, well, that's all the females. So it's even more critical for us to closely manage that because those are the ones that are actually the most important for reproducing. Go ahead.
Is there a catch and release contest or festival in Texas like there is for smallmouth and largemouth bass?
Is there like a catch and release tournament for alligator gar? I'm not sure. I haven't exactly heard of one, but it wouldn't surprise me if there is or will be in the future because, like I said, the fishery is really from now through about October. They don't feed as much in the cold part of the year in the winter. They pretty much just lay on the bottom. And so the guides I work with on the Trinity, I was talking about the tagging project. The guides I work with on Trinity, they are literally booked 7 days a week with people coming from probably, I would say the majority are coming from out of state or out of country to come here and fish. And they're paying between $500 and $1,000 a day per person.
Follow up real quick.
Yeah.
Do you still much younger had hair? I could fish it from the park
Where's that?
in Houston.
Oh yeah, I believe that. Yep.
Are they still there?
Oh yeah.
Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, we in the graph of distribution.
Still stocking them from the park?
Well, we don't do any stocking of alligator gar.
No, I mean, they're still there.
Oh yeah, they're still there. Yep. Yep. Yeah, probably some of the ones you caught then are still there. Yeah, that's another interesting thing about alligator gars that they are considered a freshwater fish, but we find them out in the coastal bays all the time, all the way out to full strength seawater. So they're really a unique fish. No, I mean, well.
I know
Next question.
Clinton had a question. I asked if they've ever attacked a human. I mean, we all saw the movie Piranha.
Well, I mean, you know, you can say attack, or you can say,
Bite.
man, I made a really bad move and put my hand by the fish's mouth when he turned and flipped around and I got bit. Yeah, I mean, there's, you know.
Two questions. One, now that you're protecting the alligator gar, are there numbers increasing? Second, what about their predation of other fish?
Well, I'll back you up one step. We're not protecting, we're managing. So we still allow harvest. It's just a managed harvest. When you have a fish that lives that long and their life history is so drawn out, it takes a long time to see change. And so, I don't know if you are or not, but the sturgeons, populations were decimated in the Great Lakes and all around because they were overfished down to 1% of abundance in, you know, like 1980, 1990. They've been working 30 years to bring them back, and they're just now starting to show the increase. And they have a similar life history. So I would say that no, we haven't seen their populations necessarily increase, but we have also not seen them decrease, and we probably won't see any appreciable difference for a long time. But we right now it's more about maintaining the size structure that we have these trophy fish in the population, not necessarily about the abundance.
How about they're eating game fish, other game?
they actually don't eat that many game fish. There was a study done by some colleagues down in Falcon Reservoir because there was some concern by bass anglers in Falcon Reservoir that alligator gar were eating all their precious largemouth. And so Parks and Wildlife did a study, and they killed, like, I want to say 400 alligator gar and did dye content analysis on them. And I believe there were only 4 bass. Most of it is rough fish, or what used to be called rough fish: carp, tilapia, buffalo, shad. So they're more of an opportunistic feeder. So they eat, they eat what they encounter versus selectively feeding on certain target species. So, they encounter, first thing they encounter is going to be something most abundant, which is usually those fish that are, not game fish. Yeah, sure. Last one. Interestingly, when they're young, each other, we found that we've done some studies that we've sampled the young a year, which is like 1 inch long, just after they hatch. We'll go out and we'll do these surveys where we'll pick them up and count them for a certain period of time or for whatever, trying to get abundance estimates. And we've actually had these fish in a bucket, and our 10 minutes is up and we'll go to the bucket and one of them's got another one down its throat already, and they're literally 1 inch long and they're eating each other at 1 inch. And so when they're young, it's really other gars. But after they grow really, really fast when they're young. So as you saw in those growth bands, those first 8 years are really huge relative to all the others. They literally can hit 30 inches in the first year. So once they've grown out of that window of vulnerability, they're pretty safe. I'll take, if you have any more questions, I'll stick around till after, because I'm getting cut off with the.
Thank you, sir. And I do have questions, so I want you to hang around. So, all right, families in Rotary. Dave's online today. He's not with us here. Colonel Rittenhouse. He's going to have to miss our veterans breakfast this week that he's always attended. Dave, I hope you don't get upset for me announcing this, but his wife tested positive for COVID. So he has to quarantine with her. And so please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, as well as Brian Bowers with his patellum tendon. I think we're down to 3 weeks now. He said he can drive in 3 weeks. So I've got pictures of the injury if anybody wants to see it. It really is not something that you want to, I don't think I want to experience it just from seeing the pictures he sent. So, but if there's any other families in Rotary from our club, please let us know and we'll make sure we put them in our thoughts and prayers as well. If not, Jeffrey, do you have some guests today that you'd like to introduce? Alligator gar.
Alligator gar, Hoshin, I think. First, thank you from me, and I assume for everybody else in the room, for all those who have engaged in Josh the Otter. What a great program. And water safety for young children like y'all have already performed and will perform the next few days on the schedule. Thank you for doing that for our community. Great job. Where are you, Paula? There she is right there, still visiting. And Capitan, you have a guest with you today.
This is Robert Garcia. He's our Regional Resource Director based in San Antonio. So we're today talking about all the opportunities in Kerrville.
Welcome.
Yes. Oh, no. She's home now. Thank you. For those of y'all didn't hear, everybody online, Johnny Miller's wife, they were at the zoo. She fainted. She went into cardiac arrest. They took her to Texan. Oh, went to Texan and had cardiac arrest while there. Brought her back, put her on pacemaker, and she's home now. So, all right. Thank you, Jack. Couple of Rotary announcements real quick for the club. Membership. I say it every week and it's working, I think, Christy. We're getting some applications, we're getting some applicants, we're getting some transfers coming in. So voted you in yesterday, but like I said, you didn't pass, so. But no, you passed with flying colors and we're looking forward to getting you all inducted in the club, so thank you. Veterans Breakfast this Friday, 8 o'clock to 9:30, the Veterans Center, 411 Meadowview, formerly Allen Hill's office. And if anybody was at City Council last night, I'm looking out, I see quite a few of us that were there last night. The city did a really nice proclamation last night for Allen. Yesterday was Alexander Allen Hill Day. So it was really nice. The city recognized him for all of his accomplishments and what he did for our veterans. But Friday morning, 8 to 9:30, please, if you can make it, be there. Come have breakfast with us. Donna just sent me a text, Donna Peterson, who co-chairs that. Really, she chairs it. The community support behind it, all of the tacos were like $120 this time. So they're getting behind us and supporting our veterans as well. So really a nice deal. Rotary Grove, Tammy Prout, you started it. We're going to continue it. Janelle's here. Janelle's asking for assistance, as well as Marta over at Shriner. What a great way to go out, spend an afternoon, water our trees that we planted, stop off at the Trailhead Beer Garden right there after you get through, or while you're doing it. So it's, are they doing the bags on them, Marta? Is that right? They're filling water bags. You just go fill up the bag and then you watch it water and go take care of yourself. So we are, if anybody wants to participate in helping, please reach out to Janelle or Marta and they will get you pointed in the right direction. But as we all know, no rain in the forecast. Our trees need water. So, yes, ma'am.
Anytime any of our members do an activity like that, or you're participating in any Rotary activity or event, if you're on social media, take a picture and post about it and let not just the trees, but the daughters.
We do. People of action. Right. So Ashley Phillips requested if you're out watering trees, not hanging out the beer garden, but if you're watering trees or doing a Rotary project, take pictures, post it on social media, tag Ashley Phillips. Everybody knows Ashley. She's the little Kerrville social butterfly. Kelly Early. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Toiletry items are needed right now. The pantry, believe it or not, is actually full right now. So that's, they've been getting a lot of help and outreach, not only just because Alan passed, but there were a lot of organizations that stepped up and started filling their pantry. So toothbrushes, deodorant, toilet paper, anything like that would be greatly appreciated so they can get that back out to our veterans. Friday the 25th, Monday the 25th, April, First Responders Golf Tournament, River Hill Country Club, 11 o'clock registration. Captain Romack, you said you have a team that you're getting in. We have 4 spots available. That makes 16 teams that we have for the tournament. We have 4 spots. There's a couple that played last year. I'm trying to say you need to play again. So let's get it to 20. And then we can be like, sorry, too late. Come back next year. But we'll still take your $500 donation to get back to our first responders. So if y'all, thank you for everybody that's participating in that. We'll have registration. We have volunteers that have reached out to do that. Then 2 days later, In the gym is Mr. Winling's yearly luncheon for our first responders. We'll be honoring those that take care of us and protect us, the ones that are recognized by their peers. So please make sure you're here for that and join us. Before I get to the wine giveaway, nice thing about sitting up here, other than everybody can watch us eat, but I get to see people I haven't seen for a while. Kim Clarkson, you're one of them. Thank you and welcome back. We've missed you. Stockton, you're with us again today. Thank you. Art Disdar. How's the knee, buddy? Almost only. So, well, welcome back. Glad to see y'all. And we'd like to see more people here than on the screen. So it's a little nicer. And as I look out and I see another Rotarian and I'm looking at her, I think she's looking at me. Rosa, are you wearing your badge, your pin today? Kim Clarkson. Hello. Well, baby steps. District Governor Christy Vandenberg, I know you have your pin on. Yes. District 10. Flat Rock Park. Yes. Flat Rock Park, May the 4th, Rotary. River Star Theater at Flat Rock Park. It's all May the 4th. Rotary picnic, May the 4th. 5:30. It's on our calendar on the Rotary landing page. So please be there for that. Next week, we will have our very own Mindy Winley here to speak to us about the Kerrville bond issue that we have coming up for the safe place. I will go on record right now, and I will do it again next week before we have her speak. Rotary Club of Kerrville is not taking a political stance in her speech. She asked if she could come. We reached out to find any opposition for it. We are not voting one way or another as a club. She's just coming in to talk about what is being offered to the city of Kerrville. That is our disclaimer as a club this week. And we'll do it again next week, that we are not one way or another voting or supporting. So good. All right. Anything else from the club for the benefit of the Rotary Club of Kerrville? If not, we'll get out on time today, almost like the city council meeting last night. So, of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? All concerned. Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?